Hey there, bestie. I'm Lori Emi, your What to Read Next podcast host. Join me as we dive into exciting new reads that'll have you reaching for your TBR pile in no time. From group of mysteries to spicy romances, we'll explore it all and help you find your next favorite book. So grab a cup of tea, cozy it up, and let's discover some amazing reads together. Hi, Anna. Welcome to What to Read Next podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
So happy to have you here. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
I am a former baby, aspiring octogenarian, and an Australian fiction writer with a love for the heartfelt and hilarious. I'm based in Melbourne, Australia, and I am the author of The Borrowed Life of Frederick Fife.
Oh my gosh, I am so excited to chat with you. I love this aspiring octogenarian. I'm like, yeah, I want to aspire to do that.
Yeah.
I'm like halfway through, and I'm like, 44 years will be a good time to do. So
I turned 41 this year, and I was really excited because it meant that I was over halfway to my goal. So
yeah. Yeah, I have to tell you, the 40s are much better than the 30s and the 20s and all the like. And so I can imagine when you turn 80, it's like, you'll be like, this is a wonderful time.
Yeah. And what a gift to turn 80. Not everyone gets to do it. So
yeah. So exciting. So let's chat about your writing journey. When did you get started? Like, I know you were starting from a little child, just starting to write stories and imagining, but when did you talk to us about that journey?
Well, so my love for writing really came from childhood, where when most kids were playing with Lego or Barbies, my best friend and I would write plays for hours and hours. We just loved writing plays and little films that we would, and I'd always loved creative writing at school, but I'd ended up getting into medical school and sort of going down that path. Writing wise, though, it was during the pandemic. Here in Melbourne, we had one of the longest lockdowns in the world. And so, like many people, I made a sourdough starter and I also began writing. So I enrolled in a couple of online writing courses, which were a really great way to connect with other writers and just to be inspired to begin writing. And that's where it started. And here we are now.
Here we are, like 4 years later. You have a little baby. So talk to us about your debut novel, The Borrowed Life of Frederick Fife. What is the elevator pitch, and what led you to start? Like, you told us you wrote it during the pandemic, but how did you keep yourself motivated? Because I feel like it probably was an escape. Was a pleasant escape from the reality that we're living in that time.
Yeah, I guess so, a little bit. So yes, the elevator pitch it's about a bizarre case of mistaken identity that gives a desperately lonely old man one last chance at being part of a family.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So Fred, the main character's name is Fred, and he is the nicest man that you will ever meet. He's incredibly kind. But when we meet Fred, he is desperately lonely. He's grief-stricken. He's a widow, and he's on the brink of homelessness. But his luck changes when, in this really zany case of mistaken identity, he takes the place of cranky resident Bernard Greer at the local nursing home. And Fred tries to explain what's happened because he's a very honest man. But because Bernard had the early signs of dementia, he's completely dismissed. And so eventually, Fred is in the nursing home. He's suddenly got accommodation that he desperately needs, and he's got warm meals, but most importantly, the chance to connect and to be part of a community and a family again. And as he walks in Bernard's shoes, he learns more about his past and what it would take to return a broken life to better condition than how he found it.
Yeah. So what was the process of writing this novel? Putting it all together, from the idea to concept. Was it the characters who came first? Was it just the identity, this whole plot point to Jew? Because I know you incorporated some twists and turns for your idea of fiction, but thinking about uplifting, uplit.
Yes. Yes. So the story began with the creation of my protagonist, who not only shares my late grandfather's name, but also his incredibly kind and selfless nature. He was my best friend, and I ended up leaving a potential career in medicine to go and work in his nursing home when he was diagnosed with dementia. Having worked in aged care, that provided the setting, and my grandfather was also an incredibly honest man, so much so that he would even struggle to play a card game that required any kind of bluffing or cheating. And so plot stems from conflict. And so I began to ponder what would happen if you put this terribly honest man in a situation where he was desperate enough that he had to deceive if he believed that he wasn't hurting anyone, which is the case, as readers will find out. And I've always been fascinated by cases of mistaken identity. And I also wanted to highlight the invisibility of older people, as sometimes happens in a nursing home. So he does look a lot like this other man, but still he's sort of quite dismissed. So that's where the plot idea grew. And yeah, it sort of went from there. I found it very important to learn a lot about structure. You really need those really strong structural points to be able to hold up 100,000 words. But then, as far as getting in between those points, what they call a bit of a pantser. So, getting to know the plot as you write and getting to know the characters, sort of sitting down with them. A huge part of the writing process for me is, as friends and family will tell you, I'm a major empath. But
Mhm.
that doesn't just stop with real human beings. It really extends to my characters. So I become very emotionally attached, and I can often be found weeping at the computer. So I'm not sure whether that makes for good writing or I need to get professional help or possibly both. But I feel that without that emotional connection, I would find it very hard to write. So I adore theatre and screenplay. And so I'm a very visual person. And when I write, I see the scenes play out like a movie in my head, complete with a cinematic soundtrack. So yeah, it's a very visual process.
Oh my gosh. So I'm assuming, did you have a playlist or like a soundtrack to get you through some scenes of like, hey, this song, can you start this? And you're like, hey, I can be in that place.
I
Oh,
kind of mainly just had the one song, and I would my daughters would laugh at me because I'd put it on in the car, and I would be weeping in the car. Like, so it was John Legend's All of Me. So
oh,
it's but yeah, there's a specific scene in mind. I won't go into any spoilers, but yeah, it's a very, very moving song for a very
oh,
moving scene. So
oh my God. And so you mentioned that you're an empath, and sometimes not just with characters that you write, the characters you read. Like, and I love the fact that you're writing for commercial fiction, for endings are not they end up happily, like essentially like romance happily ever after, but for other relationships and other things. Like,
yes.
is a big part of it. It's probably because you're like, I don't want to kill this person.
My favorite books are the ones with happy endings, I have to admit. And the same with movies. Like if there's an amazing movie, but then suddenly everyone dies at the end, I really find it really frustrating because I'm like, oh. So there is a lot of sadness, obviously, in the book. There is sadness and heartbreak. But yeah, any book that I write, I can tell you it's gonna end happily.
Which is it's totally fine. As someone who has anxiety, who needs to read at
Yeah.
the end of the book, I'm like, I want to make sure they get enough pie. But no one understands.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
my biggest pet peeve personally is when they kill off a character the last chapter. I'm like, I need to grieve. I need to
I
feel,
know.
understand. Like, you can't leave me hanging there.
Absolutely. I almost feel like just rewriting those last few pages, or like if I've seen a movie, I choose to imagine a different ending.
Yes, I am like fan fiction it. Like, I'm going to write my own ending.
Yeah, that's right. Choose your own adventure.
Yes. So, all right. So let's talk some book recommendations. I think you have like so older characters who deserve love, and I think in some ways we need to. They have wisdom, they have knowledge, they have seen the world in many
Yeah.
years. I'm older now, so I'm like, yes, I need to understand. Talk to your book recommendations because you have some really good ones to share with us.
Yes, so the books I've chosen to recommend do all have older protagonists. And when I say older, I do mean sort of around the 80 plus genre. I think there's a lot of discussion around that. There are a lot of lists that include older characters, but they include incredible characters like a man called Uva, but he's only 59, or Harold Fry, another amazing character, but he's 65. So I'm talking about the people that could be Uva's parents in that sort of generation. And I've also chosen to, yeah, just sort of focus on, there are a lot of books and a lot of movies where older people are kind of valued or interesting because that they can still do the things that younger people do.
Yeah.
Like you'll see old men going into space or women who are running businesses at 80. But the books that I like to explore are what happens when you can no longer do those things. Are you still worthy of being the hero of your own story? And I would say absolutely. So the first one is a memoir that probably many people have heard of, which is The Happiest Man on Earth by Eddie Jacku. It's an incredible memoir of this man who survived the Holocaust
Mm.
and then decided that he would focus his life on smiling every day and practicing gratitude. It's an incredibly moving book. And so I highly recommend that. He's now passed away, but he died believing that he was the happiest man on earth despite what he had done. Another one of my favorite books is Maureen Fry and the Angel of the North by Rachel Joyce. So Maureen is Harold's wife, and we all know and love Harold Fry. And Maureen, when we meet her during Harold Fry, she's almost the antagonist. She's sort of she's cold, she's stagnant, she's pessimistic. This book is the third in the trilogy, and it takes place when she's sort of approaching her 80s, mid 70s, and she goes on her own journey. And unlike Harold, who's really endearing and likes talking to people, she really struggles. And this book really just beautifully captures the inner dialogue of this woman as she goes on this journey. She's experienced trauma in her life, but she really highlights the capacity for emotional growth and healing at any age. So if I were to reach that age and have gone through trauma like that, I would love to think that it was still possible to heal and to grow and to change. Yeah. So another one is The 100 Years of Lenny and Margot by Marianne Cronin. It's a very sad story, but it's also filled with hope. It's about a 17-year-old with terminal cancer called Lenny, and she meets this older woman, Margot, in the hospital art room, and they know that their combined ages are 100, so they decide to tell 100 stories of their lives through paintings and stories. And it's just a beautiful example of the influence that an older person can have in a younger person's life. Yeah. Do you want me to keep going?
Yeah,
How many do you
so
want me to do?
yeah,
Yeah.
have a couple more, so just let
Sure. So another one that I love is by Australian author Craig Silvey. It's called Honeybee, and it's about a teenager who is struggling with gender identity and a troubled home life. And the teenager Sam meets a man in his 80s called Vic, and they meet on a bridge from which they are both planning to jump. So it's a very confronting opening, but they're sort of bounded by their struggles. And it's just this beautiful story. They hold space for one another. And I really love that Vic, who is in his 80s, ignores the outdated views on gender from his generation.
yeah.
And he just displays this quiet, unconditional love and support. And he supports Sam. And it's a beautiful story. And yes, the last one is All the Lonely People by Mike Gale. It has Hubert, who's this older gentleman. His daughter lives on the other side of the world. And because he doesn't want her to worry, he sort of has made up this very active social life that he tells her about. But suddenly the daughter announces that she's coming to visit. And so he has to suddenly decide to step outside of his comfort zone. He's very isolated in his home in London. And yeah, he's a Jamaican immigrant. There's all this background information there, but he steps out. He shows courage in embracing the world and making friendships in his 80s. So yeah, they're all my book recommendations. There's many more, but that will, yeah.
This is like perfect companion to The Borrow Life of
Yeah.
Frederick Fife, like to read afterwards. I think I'm really excited for All the Lonely People by My Gill. Like that one,
Yeah.
I'm actually really excited for that one. So I'm gonna pick that one up. But these are great recommendations, and it's a great way to look at to see like there's more to discover. Like
Yes,
you give you an opportunity to get some
absolutely.
wisdom. So and it's how else we can find out.
Oh, where you think, yes. So my website is annajohnstonauthor.com. Johnston is Johnston. Even my dad still spells it wrong. So I always say that. I'm on Instagram at Anna Johnston Author and Facebook, Anna Johnston Author.
Awesome. Thank you, Anna, for being in the show.
It's my absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for joining me on this episode of the What to Read Next podcast. If you enjoy our bookish conversations and want more recommendations, don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. Also, head on over to the What to Read Next blog for a list of books mentioned in today's show. Happy reading!